And welcome to the AgriTech Catalyst Round 10 briefing webinar for livestock and aquaculture. My name's Lucy Mather and I work for the KTN as a knowledge transfer manager specialising in livestock and aquaculture. And today I'll be chairing this webinar. So this is the second of 3 webinars that we are holding today. Earlier today we held the crop webinar, and later on this afternoon we'll be holding the food production webinar at 3 p.m. All the webinars today are being recorded and they'll be available to watch back. So a quick overview of the agenda for today. I'll hand over to Catherine from Innovate shortly, and then we'll hear from Rob Ogden about their Agri-Tech Catalyst project in Africa. Following this, you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. And finally, we'll move into the virtual networking session at around 2 p.m. So the Knowledge Transfer Network, or KTN, are the UK's innovation network. We help to build connections by bringing together businesses, entrepreneurs, academics and funders to develop new products, processes and services. We help businesses to grow the economy and drive positive change in people's lives. We can help you to find the right partners for your projects, and we can review your applications and provide you with some friendly feedback before you submit your applications. To keep up to date with all the agri-food team's activities, please do register for the Agri-Food newsletter. The link should now be being shared in the YouTube chat box. So today for this webinar series, we're joined by Simon Beatty, who's KTM for food and will be running the later webinar. And we're also joined by Pedro Cavallo, who's KTM for crops and ran the webinar earlier. Throughout the day, we were also joined by Catherine Miller, who's the innovation lead at Innovate UK. So the aims of today's webinar, firstly, is to gain a better understanding of the competition's objectives, scopes and rules. And secondly, to provide you with an opportunity to develop ideas and partnerships with other delegates, both by learning from previous projects and also participating in the consortia building sessions later on via Meeting Mojo and also using the LinkedIn group. But overall, the aim today is to help you be successful with your projects. So you can take part in a number of ways today. You're welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can do this by using the chat box on YouTube. Please do try and only ask questions which are relevant to the wider audience. If you have any specific questions, you can email Innovate's competition helpline. The email address is now showing on your screen. We will circulate all the questions after the webinars, so even if your question isn't answered live, we will provide you with an answer. Secondly, we'll be using Meeting Mojo for the virtual networking sessions today. If you haven't already done so, you can register and set up your profile in order to book one-to-one meetings. The link can be seen on your screen now, and again should also be being shared in the YouTube chat box for you to easily access this. Please do use the capabilities document which we sent around earlier this week to help you identify which delegates you like to speak to. There were over 350 delegates on this Excel, so we have sent it as an Excel document so that you're able to search through and find those that you'd like to talk to. And finally, we have set up a LinkedIn group for the AgriTech Catalyst Round 8, and we've kept this running for Round 9 and now for Round 10 to allow further consortia building to take place. Again, the link should be visible on your screen now, and we'll also share it in the chat box for you to be able to easily join this group. So now I'll hand over to Catherine Miller from Innovate UK, who's going to give us an overview of the competition.
Hello and welcome to this webinar on the AgriTech Catalyst Round 10. I'm Catherine Miller and I'm Innovation Lead for Food and Nutrition at Innovate UK. First of all, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to Innovate UK. Innovate UK is part of UK Research and Innovation, or UKRI, which aims to be a research and innovation system fit for the future. It brings together 7 research councils, Innovate UK and Research England, and together with government, we invest over £7 billion a year in research and innovation by partnering with academia and industry to fund the best research there is. As part of UK research and innovation, Innovate UK drives productivity and economic growth by supporting businesses to develop and realise the potential of new ideas, including those from the UK's world-class research base. We support businesses to realise the potential of new technologies, develop ideas and make them a commercial success. I'm going to give a brief background to the AgriTech Catalyst and then cover the competition scope. So the UK government's AgriTech strategy was launched in 2013 with the aim of improving translation of research into practical application for agriculture and related industries in the UK and overseas. There was an investment of £160 million which funded 4 AgriTech centres for innovation and also the AgriTech Catalyst for translational research. This also included funding from the Department for International Development to fund projects relevant to international development outcomes. The Department for International Development has funded the AgriTech Catalyst since 2013 and across 9 competition rounds, funding projects for UK organisations to work with organisations in developing countries. Since round 7, the focus has been on Africa. 58 projects have been funded so far, 53 of those within Africa. And this has delivered over £20 million of grant funding across 13 African countries. Round 9 projects haven't been announced yet, but will fund a further 14 projects in Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Niger, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, Tanzania and Uganda, and will provide an additional £6 million worth of funding. We now have funding through the Global Challenges Research Fund, or GCRF, to fund further rounds, including this one, round 10. We've funded a range of projects across previous Catalyst rounds. Projects within the livestock theme include projects looking at livestock disease control, for example, in Malawi, developing a replacement vaccine for East Coast fever, so a major constraint on smallholder cattle production. We've also funded a project looking at developing new vaccines that are cheaper, more stable and match circulating strains of foot and mouth disease virus in South Africa. So as I mentioned, the Department for International Development has funded the AgriTech Catalyst across the previous 9 rounds, and we now have further funding from the Global Challenges Research Fund to fund future rounds. This competition is round 10, and we also aim to open a competition focusing on later stage projects next year. These are the key dates for AgriTech Catalyst round 10. So the competition opens on the 20th of July. We have our online theme-specific brokerage events today. And then we also have an online competition briefing on the 28th of July. And this competition briefing is run by our competitions team and will go into detail around the application process and also into the project finance details. The submission deadline is 11 AM on the 21st of October. It's important just to note that quite often competition deadlines are noon on Innovate UK competitions, but these are now 11 AM, so please make sure that you submit by 11, otherwise it will not be assessed. You'll find out whether your application has been successful on the 18th of December, and projects are due to start by April 2021. The scope of the AgriTech Catalyst is broad. Projects must show the potential to deliver impact in Africa through the uptake of agricultural and food systems technologies and innovation. The scope of the Catalyst includes primary crop and livestock production, including aquaculture, non-food uses of crops except for ornamentals, challenges in downstream food processing, distribution, storage and value addition, improving availability and accessibility of safe, healthy and nutritious foods, and projects must be sustainable in the context of environmental challenges and also minimise negative effects such as pollution, food losses and waste. So the scope of the Catalyst is very broad. However, these are some areas in the livestock theme that you might consider for your project. So areas of interest include genetic improvement for productivity and disease resistance, developing livestock vaccines and medicines, controlling livestock pests and diseases, including pesticide diagnostic tools, and increasing the value of production to smallholders. Funding for this competition comes from the Global Challenges Research Fund and forms part of the UK ODA, or Official Development Assistance Commitment. ODA is defined as flows to countries and territories on the DAC list of ODA recipients. Only research directly and primarily relevant to the problems of developing countries may be counted as ODA. So applications for this competition must clearly demonstrate that the work they propose will benefit agriculture and food systems in Africa and how they will deliver this benefit. During the lifetime of a project, it may not impact large numbers of people, but proposals must show how the project will build a pathway to future development impact. There can be benefits to the UK, so in terms of company benefits and benefits to the researchers involved in the project, but this benefit must be secondary in nature. The primary benefit has to be in the developing country that you're working with. And activities can take place in the UK, but they must clearly be for challenges in Africa and not for the UK market. I'm briefly going to cover now the eligibility criteria for the competition. So these are the key points for the eligibility criteria. So projects must be collaborative. They must include a business and as a minimum, and they must include an organisation from the UK and from one of the eligible African countries that I'll show you shortly. Projects work as a hub and spoke model, so you must have a UK-based administrative lead or project lead who manages the finances and claims funds on behalf of all the other partners. There are 3 strands: early stage and feasibility studies, mid-stage industrial research and late-stage experimental development. Early stage feasibility studies must have a UK-based lead applicant, and they can be led by an academic or a business-based partner. Projects in the early stage feasibility strand can be from 100,000 to 500,000 and 12 to 18 months long. Mid-stage industrial research projects must be industry-led, so they must have an industry lead, and they can be projects from 250,000 up to £1 million and last up to 3 years. And finally, late-stage experimental development projects again must be collaborative, but these are business-to-business partnerships, so research organisations can only participate as subcontractors. These projects can be 150,000 to 800,000 pounds and last up to 18 months. And as I mentioned previously, projects need to start by the 1st of April 2021. This slide shows you the eligible countries in Africa. So the following countries are eligible for funding. If you are an organisation outside of these eligible countries, you can still participate in a project, but you need to make sure that as a minimum you meet the eligibility criteria, which includes a UK-based partner and a partner from one of these eligible countries. The amount of grant that you can claim depends on the size of your business and also the stage of research that your project is at. For early stage feasibility studies and industrial research awards, you can claim up to 70% of eligible project costs if you're a micro or small business, 60% if you're a medium-sized business, and 50% if you're a large business. For experimental development projects which are nearer to market, you can claim up to 45% of eligible project costs if you're a micro or small business, 35% for medium-sized businesses, and then 25% for large businesses. And grant rates are the same for UK and African-based businesses. This slide shows the research partner participation rules. So for early stage and mid-stage projects, the total cost for your research partners must not exceed 50% of the total project costs. If your consortium contains more than one research organisation, this 50% will be shared between them. For late-stage experimental development projects, research-based partners cannot claim funding but can participate as subcontractors. UK universities can claim 100%, so that's 80% of full economic costs. African universities can claim 100% of project costs. Other research organisations, for example, research and technology organisations, as well as public sector organisations and charities, can also claim 100% of project costs. I'm going to very briefly cover the application process for those of you who haven't applied for funding through Innovate UK before. To apply for funding through this competition, you need to go to the Innovation Funding Service, or IFS, which is an online portal to apply for funding. You need to search for the competition you're going to apply to and then click on the How to Apply tab. Here you'll find lots of information about the project questions and the application process. If you don't already have an account on IFS, you need to create an account for your organisation. The first part of the application is on your project details, so this section is not scored. First of all, you'll be asked for a short summary and objective of the project, including what is innovative about it. Then you'll be asked to fill in your public description. So this is a description of your project which will be published if you're successful, so make sure there's nothing that's commercially sensitive within this public description section. Then you'll be asked for the scope. So how does your project align with the scope of this competition? And if your project's not in scope, it won't be sent for assessment. You'll be then asked two further questions. Firstly, equality, diversity and inclusion. So there is a short survey just to collect data on applicants, but this isn't scored. And question 2 on the consortium. So again, this isn't scored, this is just providing a list of all organisations, contact details and addresses and the type of organisations in your consortium. There are 11 main questions in the application. So the first question is around the business opportunity. So outline the business opportunity and what the project team needs to do to successfully address it within the time frame of the project. Question 4 is on the market opportunity. So what is the size of the market opportunity that this project might open up? Question 5 is on the project results. So how will the project results be exploited and disseminated? And you need to describe the potential exploitable outputs of the project, such as new products or services, new processes or applications. Question 6 covers official development assistance. So why is the project eligible for ODA funding? Clearly explain how your project fits within the scope for ODA. You also must include a basic logic model with this question as an appendix. Question 7 looks at how your project is compliant with the International Development Gender Equality Act. Question 8 looks at the technical approach. So what technical approach will be adopted and how will the project be managed? You need to include the main objectives of the work that you're going to carry out and also submit a project plan as an appendix. Question 9 covers innovation, so explain what is innovative about the project. Question 10 is looking at risk. So what are the risks, whether that's technical, commercial, environmental, to project success? And what is the project's risk management strategy? You can submit a risk register as an appendix for this question. Question 11 is on project team. So do the project team have the right skills, experience and access to facilities to deliver the identified benefits in the project? So you need to describe the track record of the project team and explain why they're the best people to be involved in your project. You must submit a draft collaboration agreement as an appendix to this question. Question 12 looks at financial commitment. So what is the financial commitment required for the project? So you need to explain the project costs you've listed in the finances section of your application. And finally, question 13, added value. How does the final financial support from this funding add value to the project and the collaborators? And what impact will the injection of public funding have on the partners involved? So here are the links to the 3 strands of the competition: early stage, mid stage and late stage. Make sure that you go to the correct link depending on the stage of research that you're applying for. We have a customer support services line, and the phone number's there on the screen, and also an email address. So please do get in touch if you're not sure if your project meets the scope of the competition. We can provide advice around that. Also, you can contact the Knowledge Transfer Network in terms of your application. So you can ask to speak to the KTN to look at how you filled in the application, and they can provide some advice and guidance on that. And the Innovate UK website link is just on there as well. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to the KTN to continue the webinar.
Overview of the project scope and eligibility. If you have any questions for Catherine, please do type them in the chat box on YouTube and we'll try and answer as many as we can later. I'll now hand over to Rob Ogden, who's Professor at the University of Edinburgh and has first-hand experience working on AgriTech Catalyst projects.
Good morning everyone. My name is Rob Ogden and I'm based at the University of Edinburgh. I'm here to provide a case study on an AgriTech Catalyst Round 7 feasibility study that we've been running since September 2019. The project's called Production, Breeding and Market Development of Grass Cutter in Ghana. And if you don't know what a grass cutter is, then here's a picture of one. They're large herbivorous rodents weighing up to about 6 kilos and eaten with great enthusiasm across Central and Western Africa. Our project is a partnership with the University of Ghana and a local NGO called GIFT, with funding coming from Innovate UK and some additional support from a Japanese foundation called AIM. The overall objectives of the project are to develop grass cutter as a new commercial livestock species in Ghana. So why grass cutter? Well, it occurs naturally throughout sub-Saharan Africa and is an extremely popular bushmeat species, with many millions hunted annually and sold for a premium price, higher per kilo than livestock species. The meat also has a higher protein content than livestock meat, and the grass cutter require very little specialist feed, eating local grasses which are readily available for much of the year. Small-scale farming, usually of first-generation wild animals, is commonplace, but has not yet transitioned to full domestication and breeding. The conversion from hunting to commercial production would definitely relieve pressure on both natural populations and the wider environment, and several studies have been demonstrated the economic viability of grass cutter, as long as several hurdles can be overcome in their production. Here we can see the different stages of farming development. The first two levels in blue being found throughout Ghana, including the Upper West, a particularly low-income region centred around the town of Wa, where the economy is reliant on subsistence farming and there's a widespread lack of protein in the diet. GIFT is a regional NGO based in Wa, focusing on transitioning small-scale grass cutter rearing to professional farming, in which grass cutter are bred, their meat processed and sold commercially, initially throughout the Upper West and eventually, hopefully, nationwide. 4 key challenges have been identified which currently prevent this ambition from being realised. The supply of farmed grass cutter is not able to meet the demand that would be required for a commercial supply. Farmers lack the knowledge to optimally breed grass cutter. Farmer enterprises lack business skills to develop production, and there is currently insufficient investment and coordination to scale up supply throughout the supply chain. To address these issues, the Ghana Grass Cutter Project was established as a collaboration between the University of Ghana, GIFT, and the University of Edinburgh. The project also partners with researchers from Japan, funded by the Japanese Foundation, who support nutritional development programs. The project works on the ground in Accra to develop a breeding facility and in Wa to train farmers and support women's groups involved in meat processing and small business development. The research is divided into 3 work packages, covering the spectrum of activities from breeding through to market development. The aim of Work Package 1 is to transform the existing facility at the University of Ghana's agricultural farm and create a modern selective breeding facility capable of breeding several hundred grass cutter for supply to farmers and to achieve gradual domestication, targeting selection on docility, litter size and growth rate. Classic selective breeding will be supplemented by genetic selection as part of a grass cutter genomics research program. The picture you can see in the bottom right was taken just this week as part of the current renovation work. The second work package is based in Wa, where the focus is on supporting farmers to improve their husbandry practices and provide communal meat processing facilities. An existing network of 30 farmers is being expanded under the project to a total of 60, with resources such as manuals and posters being provided to farms alongside hands-on training from GIFT. In parallel, meat processing equipment for canning and vacuum packing is being installed, with the aim of getting food agency approval to produce registered grass cutter products at a new GIFT processing centre. Lastly, in Work Package 3, business development training is being provided alongside a series of market research surveys to help support commercialisation. The market research is being performed in several areas nationwide and on different sets of stakeholders throughout the supply chain, from producers through to consumers. Surveys are being repeated to update knowledge and assess changes to behaviour over time. Here we can see a gift consultant running a workshop on grasscutter microbusiness development for a group of farmers in Wa. As you can see, it's a fairly multifaceted project, which requires a high level of project management. The Ghana project team, including University of Edinburgh staff, meet weekly for an hour to manage progress across all 3 work packages. With only 18 months to deliver, it's been essential to create and maintain a lot of momentum from the outset. This was helped by prior relationships among most partners and a really high level of commitment from everyone on the team. As you can see from the photo on the right, sharing the local brew is also a good bonding experience that helps keep things moving. At the UK end, as lead partner, the University of Edinburgh engages the Innovate UK officer assigned to the project and manages partnership contract agreements and reporting. Our project officer is experienced, supportive and genuinely engaged, which really helps. She joined us in Ghana in December, as you can see from the photo down the bottom left. We're now approaching the halfway point of the project, with most activities on track so far. COVID-19 has caused a few hiccups, but hopefully no major delays. So I hope you found this useful. At the very least, you may now have an appetite for grasscutter. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rob. It was really good to hear about your Round 7 project and how it's going. So now we're going to move into the question and answer session. So I see some of you have already been asking questions. However, if there's any further questions that you'd like to ask, please do post them in the chat box on the YouTube page and we'll try and answer as many as we can. So firstly, I've got a question for Catherine. Says, I'm interested in integrated multi-trophic aquaculture and in aquaponics. Are these cross-cutting approaches okay for funding?
Thanks, Lucy. Yes, they would be within scope for the funding. You don't have to pick a specific area. It could be broader than one specific area mentioned in the scope. But just make sure that you thought about what you're trying to do in the actual project timeline. So you're not trying to do too much. It needs to be achievable. It needs to be ambitious, but also achievable.
Thanks, Catherine. So Rob, a question for you. So what's one thing that worked really well in the project so far, and what's one thing that you would definitely do differently if you were to do it again?
Okay, thanks. Good questions. So we are only 8 months into an 18-month project, so things may change. I think so far the thing that's worked really well is the level of engagement with the partners in Ghana. We decided to try and have a weekly project meeting with all individuals involved, and that's gone very well. It's kind of been essential because of the management from a distance kind of situation, but the level of engagement from the guys in Ghana has been fantastic. They've really delivered and fed back very rapidly, so that's gone very well. I think what I've done differently, to be honest, this is probably a University of Edinburgh end situation. Getting the contracts in place at the beginning took time. It always does, I think, when you go through university legal teams. But until we had those contracts with the partners signed up to the University of Edinburgh, and then the University of Edinburgh get the paperwork done with Innovate, we were unable to transfer any startup money to Ghana for at least the first couple of months, which when you're dealing with a small NGO, as we were in this case, it really means they can't do much for the first 2 months because there's no cash flow. So starting earlier with the university and trying to get all the different contract and grants teams working would have been a better thing to do.
That's great. Thanks, Rob. So Catherine, another question for you. If two companies are involved, one an SME who's the lead and the other a large enterprise, how will the funding be allocated?
So the grant rates that you can receive depends on the size of the business. So small and micro-sized businesses can receive 70% of funding. Medium businesses can receive 60% and large businesses can receive 50% of funding. That's for the early and mid-stage projects. For later stage projects, the grant rates are slightly lower. So it will depend on the size of the business in the consortium. So if you do have a small business and a large business, they will get different grant rates.
Great, thank you. So Rob, there's sort of more of a comment maybe than a question, but you've obviously taken the grass cutter breeding to certain parts of Africa, but it's also been recognised that this is required in Nigeria. Have you got any plans to widen this?
Not at the minute, no, but we are very aware that it's potentially big business in Nigeria too. They're a major consumer of grass cutter and currently I think have roughly the same situation with a lot of wild take and then some very sort of localized production breeding, but not really in a coordinated commercial sense. So I think we'll learn a lot from the Ghana situation. We're trying to bring science into the breeding of grass cutter, and once that's been established, we can certainly be in a position to transfer it for sure.
Great, thank you. It's Catherine, another question for you. Is research that is focused on the human side of food systems eligible, i.e. understanding cultural and social barriers to participating in livestock to market scheme?
So the food systems and nutrition sort of element really includes sort of food processing, food manufacturing, adding value to food throughout the value chain, and getting healthy, nutritious foods to people within developing countries. So it is quite broad. I think probably need to understand a little bit more about what you're trying to do within the project. But what you can do is there is will be on the screen an email address. It's support@innovateuk.ukri.org. You can send a paragraph in with just an idea of what you want to do in the project, and we'll be able to give you more of a definitive answer on whether it is in scope or not. So I just say send that in, just because it's quite difficult to say specifically.
Great, thanks, Catherine. So another one for you. Is this call factoring the impact of COVID-19 on food security? Are there opportunities to do overlap, e.g. zoonotic disease surveillance as seen with the USAID Emerge Predict programme?
So obviously we're in sort of a situation in the middle of a global pandemic. So we will take into account COVID-19, particularly around being a little bit more flexible in terms of project setup. So that's just one thing to say to start with. This isn't a programme specifically looking at COVID-19, but we want to fund things which are addressing issues in developing countries. So that is obviously an issue, and if your project meets the other scope and eligibility requirements, we would be happy to see applications on that.
Great, thank you. Catherine, another one for you. You mentioned that businesses can claim up to 70% of costs for small businesses in the early stage project call. Is this both for UK and overseas based businesses?
Yes, that's right. So the grant rates that I showed on the screen in my presentation, they apply to both UK companies and overseas companies. So it's the same grant rates. Great,
thank you. So Catherine again. We have a potential project in Botswana for financial inclusion of livestock producers for beef. Would we be eligible?
I think similar comment to the previous project. If you previous question, sorry, if you can send in a short paragraph of what you want to do within the project and who the partners are within it, and we can give you sort of an answer through the support line.
Thanks. So would projects that have an indirect contribution to productivity be eligible, i.e. tech that improves soil carbon quality and reduces dependency on external inputs?
Yes, that sounds like it would be within scope. Again, if you want a specific yes, no to a actual project idea, we would recommend sending it in through support line, but you don't have to have sort of a direct effect on productivity. The main focus of these projects is to improve livelihoods of people in developing countries, so that could be indirect.
Thank you. So Catherine, another. Can I confirm, please, that an academic organisation can be the lead applicant or technical lead on one application and collaborate on a further 2, or can collaborate on as many as we like if we are leading none?
Yes, that is correct. So if you're not leading on any projects as an academic, you can collaborate in any number of applications. And I can pop the link on the YouTube, which gives the link to the competition brief that shows that all that information as well.
Great, thanks, Catherine. So if we'll give you a couple more minutes just to type in any questions if you have them, and I'll just sort of wait and have a look and see if they're coming in, and if not, we'll move into the next session. Catherine, another question for you. Can a charity be the lead applicant?
Yes, they can.
And another, Catherine. How will one go if one project covers feasibility study and the other mid-stage? What should one do with selecting project lead and technical lead? So it sounds like they're potentially entering 2 different stages.
Yeah, so sometimes projects won't, well, quite often projects won't necessarily fit neatly into the early, mid or late stage. So you need to just choose the strand that fits most appropriately to your project. So if most of the work packages are mid-stage industrial research, if you apply through that route, then the eligibility criteria for that strand will apply. You'll then also, if you do have, for example, 5 work packages that are mid-stage and then another 2 work packages that are late stage, you'd receive grant rates for each proportion of the project based on whether it is sort of mid or late stage. So yeah, basically apply for the strand that most fits your project, but we do recognise that you might not necessarily fit very neatly into each of those.
Brilliant, thank you, Catherine. Okay, so I think we're going to move on to the Meeting Mojo session now. So if there are any unanswered questions, as I said earlier, we will be circulating a full list of the questions and answers for you. So the aim in the next half an hour or so is to allow you to find potential partners for your projects. As I mentioned earlier, you should have received an email on Tuesday with the link to Meeting Mojo, and it should also be being shared in the chat box at the moment. Also attached to the same email was this Excel spreadsheet, which I mentioned, which lists all the delegates that were registered at the time. So you should be able to search this document in order to make it easier to find the delegates that you would like to talk to. And you can then use Meeting Mojo to request one-to-one conversations with those that you've identified. So Meeting Mojo, the link should now be showing online on your screens. You can register via this link. So once you've opened it, you need to click on the Register tab at the top of the page and add your details. There's also the option to link this to your LinkedIn profile if you'd find that easier. Once you've been approved, which should just take a couple of minutes, you're able to find other delegates by using the search option and book a meeting with them by using the blue Book Meeting button on the right-hand side of the screen. So we've split each of the sessions into 15 minutes, so you can book 15-minute slots with any of the delegates, and this will be open until up to 6 p.m. this evening. We're also reopening this same Meeting Mojo, so this is the same link that you can click on the 20th of July, which is the day that the competition opens, and this will be open from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. So please do make the most of this. And finally, I'm just going to mention the LinkedIn group that we set up previously, and I've mentioned already. So we set this up for round 8, and we also used it for round 9. This group now has over 400 members in it. You can use this to post messages about your project requirements or what you can offer to projects. And there's examples of how to do this within the group. So please do feel free to use this group. The link should be shared in the chat box now. And this is what it looks like when you come across it. So thank you for joining us today. Please do make the most of the Meeting Mojo session and join the LinkedIn group, and please do get in touch if you have any further questions. Thank you.